Okay, so this is today's lecture worksheet, and we are in 9.2. So just this for today. And this has the 3 bins. They're typically the black bin, the blue bin, and the green bin. So the black bin is garbage or trash, and it is literally trashed. And for here, it's telling us it's going to landfill. The fate of garbage and trash, some garbage and trash is landfilled, which means it just is placed into an open space and covered up. And, you know, this not always is covered up. I showed you a couple of pictures in the video. It's just dumped into land, open space, and it's a waste, basically. So that's the black bin. Some garbage and trash is burned, and that is burned and to different effects. It can be burned as an open pit and lead to air pollutants, or it can be burned and capturing the gases and trying to recover some energy that way. But for the most part, anything going in the black bin is right now a total waste. There's nothing recovered from anything that is in the black bin, compared to the blue bin, which is recycling. So recyclables are generally either melted down, so that's metal, glass, and plastic, and then reused or reformed, hopefully. And then there's paper, which is pulped. So they take paper and they shred it, add water, they pulp it, and they can make it into recycled paper. And so that is another is the bin that's the green bin. So the green bin is compost. And so compost is usually the one that people are least familiar with. And compost, we'll get to talk about what goes into where for all of these. But basically, these 3 types of collection didn't exist before 1980. Before 1985 or so, there was just one bin. Okay, now each of these bins, they're called single stream. So single stream recycling, single stream compost. There has to be sorting out of the recycling bin. And so that makes it a little more complicated. It's called single stream recycling that most cities do. And it is the reason why those plastic bags, which are plastic number 2, do not get recycled. It's because they basically gum up the system, as you saw in the video. And so what we have is first understanding that this is what's collected from most cities. It's called municipal solid waste, and it's the black bin, the blue bin, the green bin. Okay. And so the general guidelines for what's going in recycling or the blue bin are anything that is metal, glass, or paper. And so that's basically most bottles, cans, and then paper. The things people usually ask, do you have to clean it out? So let's say you had a drink in this plastic cup. Do you have to wash this out? In fact, you don't actually have to wash out anything that is going in the blue bin. So that's a plastic cup or a soup can. Let's say you open a can of soup and you have the residue of the soup left over in there. You don't need to wash it out. You need to make sure it's mostly clean, so relatively clean, and basically empty, because what happens when the plastic or the metal or the glass gets recycled is it gets melted at a very high temperature. And that usually takes care of any of the residue, the food residue gets melted off before and doesn't actually contaminate the process. So because all these things are heated up to high temperatures, you don't have to wash this out very well. You just need to basically wipe it out, make sure it's wiped clean. And the reason for that is so that you don't have vermin going into your recycling bin. So it's also easier if there's not a ton of food in the blue bin. So basically relatively clean is what you need for recyclables. And then this other thing is don't mix any plastic bags, because plastic bags are low density polyethylene. That's that very flexible plastic number 4. Okay, and so that plastic number 4 should not get mixed in. And what I do is I have a separate collection of just bags. And that separate collection of bags, some of the bags I use for garbage and that can actually go in the garbage, and I use it to collect garbage and take the garbage out and put it in the black bin. Okay. So those are loose plastic bags. Do not recycle those in the blue bin. So that's plastic number 4. It's LDPE. So there's separate collection for plastic bags, and the grocery store is the number 1 place. In general, Target. So I take it to Target about 4 times a year. I have these big bags of bags. Okay. So then any plastics that are smaller than your palm, even if it's a plastic that can be recycled, like plastic number 2, that's usually the lids of a plastic bottle like this. So this plastic bottle is plastic number 1. That's the most common, is water and soda bottles. And so the way to do this is to look at it and say, all right, this cannot be recycled if it's smaller than your hand. So that lid, if it's smaller than your palm, even though this is plastic number 2, compared to this plastic number 1, the best way to deal with this is either throw the lid into garbage, which is a bummer because that's wasted, or put the lid back onto it. And that lid, the reason why, even though it is recyclable, it's too small. And just like those plastic bags gum up the system, that lid, anything too small, anything smaller than the palm of your hand, even though it's recyclable material, even though it can be melted down, it gets stuck in the system. And so anything small that is recyclable should be tried to put the lid back on. That's the best way to deal with that. Okay. The other thing is that you don't ever want to put in any food. Food has to go into the black bin. Okay. Or what I like to do is make sure you don't have any food going into any black, blue, or green bin, and basically try to use the garbage disposal. Chop it up. That's actually the best way to deal with it. Okay. Now Mylar is kind of confusing. So Mylar are these bags that look like metal, but they are layers of metal and plastic. They're chips bags. So this bag of Cheetos, the way to know you have Mylar is it has that silvery look, and it is plastic layered with metal, because most of the time, if you're familiar with foil, foil is not flexible like this. And so Mylar is a flexible metal. So anytime you are looking at a flexible metal, it's generally Mylar. So there are Mylar balloons, but most bags for chips are Mylar. They were developed so that chips could stay fresh, keep air out. And so you have your crispy chip inside. And so, but this, however, because they are layers of metal and plastic, cannot be recycled. The metal cannot be separated from the plastic. So unfortunately, this Mylar has to go in the garbage. It is not plastic. It's not metal. It's both, can't be dealt with. Any broken glass is complicated. So glass needs to go in the blue bin, but not if you have a bunch of little pieces of glass, because that, just like the plastic, anything smaller than the palm of your hand is not going to get recycled. It is just going to gum up the system. I talked about e-waste. We're going to get to e-waste in a future lab, but e-waste are any electronics, basically anything you plug in. So that can be electronic, like a cell phone or a computer, but also a hairdryer or a calculator. Anything you plug in is considered e-waste, and you need to deal with that separately because there are all kinds of exotic and rare metals in e-waste, even the hairdryer. And so that we will get to in lab about recycling. And then any hazardous waste, I need an E there, and that includes batteries. We talked about hazardous waste last, I think a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about batteries, but batteries, it also includes any household chemicals, and it also includes any prescription medications. Those need to be disposed of separately. And there are collection for batteries. There's collection for household chemicals or hazardous waste, and there's also collection for medications. You don't want medications basically in our shared water system, which is not able to be separated out. And so, you know, you can actually detect levels of Prozac in our water, in our municipal water system, because that cannot be taken out. It does affect long-term, mostly not us, but the marine life that gets exposed to these medications that end up in the water system. So what does go in the blue bin? So this is plastics 1 through 7. And so those are the big 6 plastics. So those are our big 6 plastics. And it should have that plastic number on it. But even if it doesn't have a plastic number on it, like this is this very clear plastic cup, I don't see any recycling symbol on it. But that doesn't mean it's not recyclable. It just means the company didn't put a recycling symbol on it. And so I know that this is plastic number 6. That's the polystyrene, the crystalline form. And so this goes in I know is recyclable. So all those big 6 plastics except number 4, because remember that low density polyethylene, the very flexible plastic, like plastic bags, like wrap, that has to go in the garbage. Any paper or cardboard, and remember, it doesn't have to be clean, but it should be broken down so you can fit it all in there, can go in the blue bin. Any metals also doesn't have to be clean, just has to be wiped out. So wipe out any soup can, or if you have a soda, you just need to finish drinking the soda. It doesn't have to be cleaned out, it just has to be basically empty to go in the blue bin. And then any glass like let's say you have a pasta sauce. Does it have to be washed out? No, it just has to be basically emptied out. Okay, so emptied out. It doesn't have to be perfectly clean. You just want it emptied out so that there's not going to be a bunch of stuff going through and trying to eat what's remaining. So what goes into the black bin is your trash or your garbage. Okay, and then what goes into the green bin is what's called compost. And what's compostable are garden waste, like leaves. Okay, leaves or grass. Actually, let me add that, leaves and grass. But also kitchen scraps are compostable. And so think about that as far as the garden waste. So nature, like your apple core. If you eat an apple and you have the apple core, or if you have the avocado pit, anything that came from nature can go back into nature, and those are your kitchen scraps. The ends of your carrot. Okay, those are all compostable. Compared to what goes in the blue bin, so that's your recyclables. And that's these, the plastic, paper, metal, and glass. Okay, and so the plastic, paper, metal, and glass, that's the single stream recycling that goes into the blue bin. And so you just put it all in there. Don't put it in a bag, just throw it directly in there. So let's decide what goes where. And this is going to be important for your discussion. When you are, this week's discussion, I pointed out, you're going to have to go find something outside, pick up the first thing you see, and then dispose of it. Okay, so where should an empty cardboard box go in? So this is going in your blue bin. That's cardboard and paper. Okay, how about a used yogurt container? So a used yogurt container is plastic. What you're going to want to do is wipe it out, and then that will go in your blue bin. So you don't need to wash it out. Just make sure it's got most of the yogurt out. If you want to give it a quick rinse, fine, but as long as it's just basically empty of the yogurt, that can go in the blue bin. How about that Mylar chips bag? This bag right here. It looks like metal, but it's not metal. It feels like plastic, but it's not plastic. It is layers of metal and plastic, and unfortunately, this has to go in the garbage. It is not recyclable because you cannot separate those layers. Okay. How about a pizza box that is cardboard? So even though a pizza box is cardboard, and cardboard can be recycled, if it has grease stains, well, that basically ruins the pulping process. And so anything with grease stains has to go in the garbage. Sometimes if there's not a lot of grease, it can go in the green bin, because the worm composting can handle some grease, but worms that eat up and deal and work in the compost bin, in the green bins, they basically cannot handle any food. How about a dead battery? What happens to a dead battery? So what I do for batteries is I have a battery collection. And so that battery collection is separate from black bin. It's not your green bin. It is not your blue bin. It is basically considered hazardous waste or some separate collection. And so ideally you have a container of batteries, dead batteries, and then you can take those batteries into battery collection. And that is because batteries have acids in them. They also have metals in them. And those are rare metals like copper or zinc. And so you want to make sure that does not end up in landfill, because then those metals or the acid will leach into the landfill and contaminate our water aquifers, our underground water stores. How about an old iPhone? So an old iPhone is considered electronics. And that's electronics. Anything you plug in is e-waste. And so that e-waste is a special collection. And so it should not go into the black bin. It should not go in the blue bin. It should not go in the green bin. Old iPhones you take to e-waste, and that e-waste collectors basically separate everything from that phone. And we know from way back in week 1 that there are over 70 types of elements in your iPhone, and they include rare compounds like gold or arsenic. And so those can be recycled and repurposed, but it can't be done by your standard recycling facility. How about a Ziploc bag? So what is a Ziploc bag? A Ziploc bag is that very flexible plastic that is low density polyethylene. That is plastic number 4. What do you do with plastic number 4? So that is special collection for plastic number 4. That's the grocery store collection, remember, LDPE. So that is low density polyethylene. And so I have a bag of bags. I take those bags in twice a year, 4 times a year, basically because I try to have very little bags. So what is Ziploc bags are included in that? Or let's say you buy a bag of bread and your bread is that very flexible plastic. That's plastic number 4. And I collect all of that. Or let's say you have a sandwich and it's wrapped up in that very flexible plastic. That's plastic number 4. That wrap I put in my collection and take that collection 2, 3, 4 times a year and dump it off at Target. Okay. How about styrofoam? So styrofoam, like this cup. So styrofoam, remember, is plastic number 6. So that is plastic number 6. That's called polystyrene or PS. And it is styrofoam. And so styrofoam has air blown into it. It is the same as this plastic number 6 that does not have air blown into it. They are both plastic number 6 and they are both recyclable. And so in theory, this can go into the recycling bin, this styrofoam cup, as well as any styrofoam packing material, those packing peanuts. But remember, one thing about those packing peanuts is they fall into anything smaller than the palm of your hand. And so that packing material, the best thing you can do to it is actually melt it down so that it is a lump. And that lump, if it's collectively larger than your hand, then you can put it in your blue bin. Okay. And so that can be recycled. That can go in your blue bin, but it has to be larger than the palm of your hand. So if it's smaller than your palm of your hand, then it goes into the black bin or garbage. Okay. Or save it and recycle it, use it, or save it and reuse it to pack something else up. Okay. So remember, reduce, reuse. Reduce and reuse come before recycling. If you can do either of those things, basically not have it in the first place or reuse it, that's almost better, almost always better than trying to recycle it. Okay, so